Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Now we are going to talk about conflict and negotiation. First of all, look at the definition of conflict, that it is a process that begins when one party perceives that another party has negatively affected or is about to negatively affect something that the first party cares about. In that point, it's an ongoing activity when an interaction crosses over to become an inter-party conflict. So when we think in terms of conflict, remember that it encompasses a wide range of conflicts that people experience in organizations. There might be conflict related to incompatibility of goals, differences over interpretations of facts, disagreements based on behavioral expectations, and many others. So there is a transition in conflict thought. First of all, it was assumed that traditionally speaking, conflict was taken up as harmful and must be avoided. And the causes they identified were that the conflict is taking place because of poor communication, lack of openness, and failure to respond to employee needs. Then there was a transition in conflict thought, which started talking about human relations view of conflict. And the human relations view of conflict said that the belief that conflict is a natural and inevitable outcome in any group. Afterwards, interactionist view of conflict was developed, and the basic belief they were having that conflict is not only a positive force in a group, but that it is absolutely necessary for a group to perform effectively. Now, the conflict can be functional and dysfunctional. The functional conflict is positive in its nature. The conflict that supports the goals of the group and improves its performance, which is generating different alternatives. And the dysfunctional conflict would be negative in its connotation, and the conflict that hinders group performance. In addition to that, there are types of conflicts in organizational context. The first type is task conflict, which means conflicts over content and goals of the work. Then there can be relationship conflict, which is conflict based on interpersonal relationships. And then even there can be process conflict, which means conflict over how work gets done. Now, we are looking at the conflict process. There are 5 stages involved. The starting point is the stage 1, which is potential opposition or incompatibility stage, in which antecedent conditions are communication structure and personal variables. After that, there is cognition and personalization stage, which is evolved out of the antecedent conditions, and that would be perceived conflict and felt conflict. After that, there are certain intentions, and the conflict handling intentions could be competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. We'll be discussing all these things in the coming slides. The 4th stage would be behavior, which is overt conflict, parties' behavior, and others' reaction. And then the 5th would be the outcome stage, in which increased group performance and decreased group performance can be the outcomes, can be the results. Now, starting from the stage 1, which is potential opposition or incompatibility. By communication, we mean to say semantic difficulties, misunderstandings, and the noise, which would cause the disruption of perception and understanding. Then there can be the structural issue related to the size and specialization of jobs, jurisdictional clarity and ambiguity, member goal incompatibility, Leadership style, close or participative. Reward systems can be win-lose, lose-win, win-win. There can be different reward systems. And then dependence, interdependence of groups. These are the issues we need to think about. And in terms of personal variables, differing individual value systems, personality types, these are the things we need to look upon. Stage 2 is talking about cognition and personalization. When we say perceived conflict, it would mean awareness by one or more parties of the existence of conditions that create opportunities for conflict to arise. And when we say felt conflict, it would mean emotional involvement in a conflict creating anxiety, tenseness, frustration, or hostility. And a mixture of positive feelings and negative emotions would combine together to create the overall conflict definition. In stage 3, when we look at the intentions, decisions to act in a given way, and those decisions will be based upon either our context is cooperativeness or assertiveness. And when we say cooperativeness, it attempts to satisfy the other party's concern. And when we say assertiveness, this would be related to attempting to satisfy one's own concerns. And 5 dimensions of conflict handling can be evolved based upon cooperativeness and assertiveness. For example, in case of competing, cooperativeness is uncooperative and assertiveness is high. In terms of avoiding, cooperativeness is low and assertiveness is low. In terms of accommodating, you are more cooperative and less assertive. In case of collaborating, your cooperation and assertiveness is combined together to create synergy. And the most unwanted situation can be compromising, in which the clarity about the cooperativeness and assertiveness is not present. So let's define these expressions in a bit more detail. In terms of competing, it says a desire to satisfy one's interest regardless of the impact on the other party or the conflict. Other party to the conflict. In terms of collaborating, it says a situation in which the parties to a conflict each desire to satisfy fully the concerns of all parties. And in terms of avoiding, the desire to withdraw from or suppress a conflict. So you are avoiding the situation, which is perhaps the worst of all. In terms of accommodating, the willingness of one party in a conflict to place the opponent's interest above his or her own. And the least required would be to go for a compromise, and that is a situation in which each party to a conflict is willing to give up something. But the compromise, remember, would always carry the elements of regret. So once the intentions are clear, the next step would be behavior, in which conflict management related behaviors are investigated. For example, the use of resolution and stimulation techniques to achieve the desired level of conflict. Now, there is a conflict intensity continuum. For example, we start from no conflict situation and we move towards an annihilating conflict. And the in-between stages would be, it would start from minor disagreement or misunderstandings, then overt questioning or challenging of others, then assertive verbal attacks, then it can be threats and ultimatums. Then the situation can turn into aggressive physical attacks. And last but the worst would be overt effects to destroy the other party. There are certain conflict management techniques, and the conflict resolution techniques would include problem solving, superordinate goals, expansion of resources, avoidance, smoothing, compromise, authoritative command, altering the human variable, altering the structural variable. So there can be different responses, different acts we can perform to manage the conflict. And conflict resolution techniques would also include communication, bringing in outsiders, restructuring the organization, and appointing a devil's advocate. And out of these, I believe that communication is very important, because most of the time the conflicts, dysfunctional conflicts, are there because there is a lack of communication, or the communication is distorted because of some noise. And bringing in others, having others as mediators, so that is also an effective way to resolve conflict. Now we move towards the stage 5, which is outcome. And the functional outcomes from conflict can be increased group performance, improved quality of decisions, stimulation of creativity and innovation, encouragement of interest and curiosity, provision of a medium for problem solving, creation of an achievement for self-evaluation and change. These can be the functional outcomes from conflict. And remember that these functional outcomes can be achieved because there would be more alternatives, and out of mutual understanding, those outcomes, those alternatives would be shortlisted and the best ones would be selected. So creating functional conflict would reward the dissent and punish conflict avoiders. But in case of dysfunctional outcomes from conflict, there would be development of discontent, reduced group effectiveness would be the result, retarded communication is there, reduced group cohesiveness can result, and infighting among group members overcomes group goals. Now let's start from the topic of negotiation in terms of conflict. Obviously, when you say the word negotiation, you are referring to a process in which two or more parties exchange goods or services that attempt to agree on the exchange rate for them. So bargaining, negotiation, these are the issues we need to talk about. And obviously the two parties would be having a conflict in their discussion as well. And we have to convert that conflict into a win-win situation, into a functional conflict situation in which both the parties are agreeing upon the beneficial outcomes. There is a very important expression in terms of negotiation, and that is BATNA, B-A-T-N-A, which means the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, the lowest acceptable value outcome to an individual for a negotiated agreement. So that is what we call the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, BATNA. Now, during the bargaining, there would be distributive bargaining and integrative bargaining. When we say distributive bargaining, it means negotiation that seeks to divide up a fixed amount of resources, a win-lose situation. Whereas in integrative bargaining, negotiation that seeks one or more settlements that can create a win-win solution. So that would be rather more preferred. So distributive versus integrative bargaining situations would be different in terms of bargaining characteristics. As you could see on the slide, that when you say bargaining characteristic goal, distributive bargaining would say get as much of pie as possible, and integrative bargaining would say expand the pie. When you say motivation, it would be win-lose, and on the contrary, integrative would say win-win. When you say focus, distributive would talk about positions and integrative would talk about interests. When you say information sharing, distributive would talk about low and integrative would talk about high information sharing. And when you talk about duration of relationship, obviously with these characteristics, distributive bargaining would be short term and integrative bargaining would be long term. So sometimes you need to stake out the bargaining zone. So there is a party A's aspiration range, there is party B's aspiration range. And then out of the bargaining, there would be a settlement range in which both the parties would be agreeing upon a value, and they would try to create a situation in which both are having the feeling of the gain, and that would be known as settlement stage. Now the negotiation process, in terms of obviously Bhatana as well, it would start from preparation and planning. The next step would be definition of ground rules. Then there is clarification and justification. Afterwards, bargaining, problem solving, and then there would be closure and implementation of the decision. There are certain issues in relation with negotiation. The first one is the role of mood and personality trait in negotiation. It is saying that positive moods positively affect negotiations. So positive thinking is always appreciated, and traits do not appear to have a significantly direct effect on the outcomes of either bargaining or negotiating processes, except extraversion, which is bad for negotiation effectiveness, because the person will be trying to dominate the situation unnecessarily. Now there can also be a discussion related to gender differences in negotiation. It is said that women negotiate no differently from men, although men apparently negotiate slightly better outcomes. And again, it would be a very subjective measure. We cannot make it a rule. Men and women with similar power bases use the same negotiating styles, and women's attitudes toward negotiation and their success as negotiators are less favorable than men's. Again, we cannot make it a rule. This is a very subjective measure discussion. Cross-culturally, there is like differences in terms of, there are differences in terms of negotiations. For example, why American managers might have trouble in cross-cultural negotiations. It is said that Italians, Germans, and French don't soften up executives with praise before they criticize. Americans do, and to many Europeans, this seems manipulative. Israelis, accustomed to fast-paced meetings, have no patience for American small talk. If we see British executives, they often complain that the American counterparts chatter too much. Indian executives are used to interrupting one another. When Americans listen without asking for clarification or posing questions, Indians can feel the Americans are not paying attention. Americans often mix their business and personal lives. They think nothing. For instance, about asking a colleague a question like, how was your weekend? In many cultures, such a question is seen as intrusive because business and private lives are totally compartmentalized. So as we can see the different perspectives in different cultures around the world, the different types of negotiations and different types of arguments and bargainings and conflicts can arise due to cultural differences. Now the third party negotiators can also be there. We can talk about mediator, a neutral third party who facilitates a negotiated solution by using reasoning, persuasion, and suggestions for alternatives. We can also look at arbitrators, who are the third party to a negotiation, who has the authority to dictate an agreement. Then there can be conciliator, a trusted third party who provides an informal communication link between the negotiator and the opponent. And then we can see consultants can also be there, who are an impartial third party skilled in conflict management, who attempts to facilitate creative problem solving through communication and analysis. So conflict and unit performance can be seen in this graphical representation, that situation A, in which the level of conflict is low and the performance is low. So type of conflict is dysfunctional, and unit's internal characteristics can be apathetic, stagnant, non-responsive to change, lack of new ideas, and the unit performance is obviously resulting into low. The second is when level of conflict is getting moderate, at moderate level, and the unit performance is getting higher, and the unit's internal characteristics would be viable, self-critical, and innovative. More alternatives would be generated. And again, it can become dysfunctional if the conflict level is high, and that would be disruptive, chaotic, and uncooperative situation, which is dysfunctional, and performance would again be declined. So when to use competition, it says when quick decision can be taken, when decisive action is vital in emergencies on important issues, when unpopular actions need implementing in cost cutting, enforcing unpopular rules, or issues vital to organization's welfare, when you know you are right, competitive situation is better, and against people who take advantage of non-competitive behavior. So that is the situation when you may use competition. Use collaboration to find an integrative solution when both sets of concerns are too important to be compromised. When your objective is to learn, to merge insights from people with different perspectives, to gain commitment by incorporating concerns into a consensus. And we can go for collaboration when we have to work together, when we have to work through feelings that have interfered with a relationship. The avoidance can be beneficial when an issue is trivial or more important issues are pressing, when you perceive no chance of satisfying your concerns, when potential disruption outweighs the benefits of resolution, when you have to let people cool down and regain perspective, when gathering information supersedes immediate decision, when others can resolve the conflict effectively, and when issues seem tangential or symptomatic of other issues. We can go for accommodation. That can be the technique to resolve the conflict when you find you are wrong and to allow a better position to be heard, to learn and to show your response, show your reasonableness when issues are more important to others than to yourself, and to satisfy others and maintain cooperation, then to build social credits for later issues, to minimize loss when outmatched and losing. Accommodation is beneficial when harmony and stability are especially important, and accommodation is beneficial when you have to allow employees to develop by learning from mistakes. The compromise situation can arise when goals are important but not worth the effort of potential disruption of more assertive approaches, when opponents with equal power are committed to mutually exclusive goals, and compromise is suggested to achieve temporary settlement to complex situations. Otherwise, compromise is never appreciated. And the compromise can also be used to arrive at expedient solutions under time pressure. And the compromise situation can also be there as a backup when collaboration or competition is unsuccessful. So there is a very famous quotation upon which I'll be ending our today's talk, and that would be the quotation from John F. Kennedy. And he said, "Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate." On these words, I end my today's talk, and next time we'll be having our discussion related to ergonomics and organizational development and change management. And we'll be also talking about some stress issues as well. So that would conclude our semester and course. So thank you for today. See you inshallah next time.